Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Burns and thank you for joining me on Walking with the Word. This is a simple program designed for you and to me just to take our Bibles, open them up, and to find some things that will help us in our daily lives. As we walk about everywhere we go, we can be people who walk according to what the Bible has to say, the Word of God. As we start, I want to give a bit of update to some things that we are doing with this room and things we're doing with this program. We will be taking about a 2 to 3 week break. We'll see how it goes. You'll understand why in just a minute. That we need to do some things to help in the things that we're doing in this room. Number one, we're going to take some time to rewire all of our cameras, rewire all of our multi-views and program feeds and recording devices. Because we're adding a couple of devices inside our stage. This is a camera that will be added. We'll add one to each of our main cameras. This is the small version of the big one that you're viewing right now. The large one has all sorts of inputs and things that goes, but this one's just a simple little addition to give us a secondary feed. You'll understand that in just a moment. So we're going to add those as well as wire them appropriately into the room, and then we're going to add a secondary device. This device alone is going to save us right around, I'm going to say $14,000. There's something we're wanting to do, but unfortunately our equipment isn't robust enough to add it. So we're going to add something in our upstream so that we can do all of our programming like we do regular, using our little device that we have built out so we can control things all sitting right here. So we're going to add a couple of things, rewire a number of things, change a few things. We'll even change some things in the background. You'll notice the last a little bit we've had these light panels in the room. We've been testing those for a variety of reasons. But we're going to take a 2 to 3 week break to make some infrastructure changes so that we can add a couple of series toward the end of the year. We have some series we want to record in the fall of the year and the spring upcoming. We have everything prepared for those, and we'll be setting the stage for that now. This is about a 6-month project we've been working on that will culminate starting next Monday. So we'll be in a 2 to 3 week break, depending on how everything takes as we press forward. Now today's question, today's idea, today's topic is one that I think will be very intriguing to you. How to raise a family in this world. You see, from the time of Adam and Eve, there are a lot of things that have not changed. In the very beginning, in Genesis 1, 2, and 3, God creates the world, God creates the animals, God creates man. God gives man a helpmeet. They are helpmeets together and they are united together. And we see that in the scenes of mankind. Inside of the scenes of mankind, we see the design of the family, the father, the mother, the husband, the wife. The parents, the children, and so on down the line as life continues to flourish and to grow. But we also see, as the Bible unfolds, the problems that come with mankind. We don't always make appropriate or right decisions in the things that we do. I'm talking about as mankind as a whole. Also, in a deep sense, we also don't always do what's correct on an individual basis. We understand that in a very simple sense of Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. You see, we are people who need help and instruction as we press forward. So there are some things that have not changed. God has set some standards and man has been pushing those standards, well, ever since man began. Also, there are some things that have changed. You know, technology has changed. Here we are today talking about additions we're making in this room. Something so small and something that 20 years ago could not exist in this form factor, doing what this little thing could do. Things such as wireless remotes to control various devices, or even, think about this for just a moment, think about your smartphone and what it's been able to do over the number of years as it has evolved. There are all sorts of things that have changed. Think about this one. This is a big one. The population of our earth has increased. From the very beginning, starting with 2 to now some 8 billion people on the world, our world, in a certain sense, is the same, but it has also changed. And now in this generation of children, how do we raise our family in this world? I want to give you 5 words that start with a T that will help us see how we can raise our families. Talk, time, take, trust, and treat. Let's see the first. It's talk. But Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, "My father." And he said, "Here am I, my son." And then he said, "Look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "My son, God will provide for Himself the lamb for a burnt offering." So the 2 of them went together. Here we have the occasion where Abraham has, as what we're reading about, has obviously talked with his son before. "My father, my son." They have the ability to communicate. You know, one of the things we're learning in our lives, we're losing the ability, this little device right here, to communicate one to another on a personal level. We text, we direct message, we do all sorts of things to avoid that one-on-one communication. Here is a man and his son, and they talk together. They have mutual respect together. And in the scenes of this, we learn some things that they have talked about in their lives. Where is the lamb? We've got the fire, we've got the wood. Where's the offering? Now, you and I, where we live, not just geographically, but location as it comes to the cross of Christ, we don't offer sacrifices as if to offer burnt offerings of the Old Testament. That was done away with Jesus upon the cross, the ultimate sacrifice for the problems of sin. So here's a sacrifice. Here is a worship per se, and they have talked about it. And he reckons enough, the son reckons enough to say, "Where is the lamb?" And I love how it ends. So the 2 of them went together. One of the greatest things we can do is talk to one another. When it comes to our families, husbands need to talk to their wives, and wives need to talk to their husbands. Parents need to talk to their children, and children need to talk to their parents, and there are a number of things parents need to talk about. I want to share with you a couple of categories, not exclusive topics, but categories that parents need to talk to their children about, even though they're uncomfortable. We need to talk to our children about worship. Going to church needs to be a priority. We're going to see that in just a minute. We need to talk to our children, our families, about our relationships one to another, but also the relationships that we bring into our families. Those friendships that fathers and mothers might have outside of the family. Those friendships that children might have with other children and others that we may know. Those relationships that our children begin to develop, and what makes an appropriate and right relationship. You see, we must talk about things that can be uncomfortable. Every now and then when we're at home and maybe some language comes across the television that we didn't expect coming, or something is on the television that we just didn't know was coming, I'll look at my boys and I'll ask them, you know that's not all right. "Oh yeah, Daddy, we know." And we have those conversations as to not why I'm saying it, but why that's not the standard of which we follow. We must talk. Here's a father. Where's the lamb? He knew enough to ask the questions and had the ability to ask and know he wouldn't be rebuked. Talk. Here's the second. Time. Proverbs 22:6. "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Now, there's 2 views on this passage. One view is this is a Hebrew phrase to denote the life of the child. As in, give him a future, give him responsibility, give him a path, And he'll never be the wicked, slothful, lazy individual. There's a second way to look at this passage. To train up a child in the way he should go. Here's how we train our children. Go to heaven. Now, some have a problem with that idea because sometimes children leave the Lord. And they struggle with the last part. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. What's he departing from? The Lord or the reminder of the training? It will never leave him. The things we instill in our children, if we are who we say we are as parents, if we take the time that we're supposed to as parents, it'll never leave them, whether they follow it or not. So no matter how you view this idea, the idea is taking the time to instill something in the child. And it has to do with the way he goes forward from you. You see, the hardest thing about parenting is not the parenting process. It's about training your child for the time when you'll no longer be here. That's the natural cycle of parent-child relationship. Now, sometimes that gets broken. I understand that with tragedies and other things. But that's the natural progression. Train them for the time when you're not here anymore. Boy, and that's hard because how many of us want to think about that? How many of us want to think about the time when we're not here for our children, not just here for the day or the week or the time, when we're no longer here on earth? But we have to take the time now. What that means is there must be a priority in what I'm doing. Where I take my children, where I take my family, where I become who I'm supposed to be. Are fathers fathers or are they mothers? Are husbands wives or are they wives? That's an interesting thought. It takes time to develop this. Not only that, I want to give you our third T. Take. This is from Luke 2:41 and 42, and it's in the scenes of the life of Jesus. His parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. What'd they do to him? They took him with him. Parents, take your children to church. I want to give a side note about something. Churches, stop having children's church. We need to have time to train our children in the assembly. Otherwise, they're never going to know how they ought to act. Otherwise, they're never going to know what they should be doing. Also, in a side note, we never see in the New Testament separate assemblies. Now, we might see separate classes and separate studies and separate prayers, but never separate worship. Let's bring our children into the assembly. And let's worship with them. Let's train them to worship. Not just to draw or to color or to play with their cars. And I understand young minds need something to keep them busy at times. But let's also take the time, not just to keep them quiet, but to show them why we're here. Little boy walked up to me once. It was my favorite thing that he's ever asked me. I haven't seen this little fella in a number of years. He's not a little fella anymore. I saw a picture of him. Wow, he's gotten big. But he asked me one Sunday, why'd you get in that bathtub? Someone was baptized on a Sunday morning, and he wanted to know why I got in that bathtub. What a moment. Because the parents took their child to church. Take them to Bible study. Take them to gospel meetings. Take them to VBS. Take them to anything you can do that will give them some spiritual insight when God's Word is open. Take them even though they're going to be bored. That's okay. They'll learn. And one day, they'll look back on fondness of the time together. Here's number 4. Trust. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because it's one you as husbands and wives need to gather together some information about how you're going to apply this in your family. But Luke 15:13 through 14, not many days after, the younger son gathered together and journeyed into a far country. But there he wasted his possessions on prodigal living. When he had spent all, there he arose a severe famine in that land. He began to be in want. Here's the prodigal. Father, give me all that's mine. What's the father do? Here's all that's yours. Father, I'm leaving. Okay, son. We're not talking about a 10-year-old here. But I want to make the application. We've got to train our children to be responsible adults. We're not trying to to train our children to be responsible children. Our children have to be responsible adults. And thus we've got to give them what I call a leash. We in our family, we let our young boys, now they're just 9 and 6, they like to stay up late in the summertime and on Friday nights in the school season. And once we send everybody to their room, they get to go to the room and they can stay up and watch their tablets. We have certain things selected for them. And if they want to play and talk and do whatever, they can do that. But we give them a time. All right, it's so-and-so time, 9:30. You better go put this stuff up and you go to sleep. See, we're trying to instill trust, not only in them to us, but us to them. This father, I don't know how he did it. Here's all the chores, go. I don't know how he did it. Where's he at? What's he doing? But he trusted that upbringing, that responsibility that he had put into that child made a difference. Here's your 5th T. Treat. Ephesians 6:4. And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord. I want to look at the last 2 big words, training and admonition. Training, we get it. Admonition, we're going to have to rebuke them. We're going to have to discipline them when they need it. But remember this, of the Lord. What's the idea? Let's not treat our children so that they are angry. Now here's something that's true. You tell your child they can't have something, they might get mad. I look at my boys and say, you want me to give you something to be mad about? And then they seem to get it. You want me to give you something to be mad about? Because parents are parents. And we've got to treat our children as if they're our children. They're not the decision makers of the family. They are the children. And you are the parents. Treat them that way. I know some young people not going to like that. Well, I want to do what I want to do. You're still a child. I know that stings to hear. But we've got to make sure we treat one another appropriately. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now don't forget this, your children aren't your parents, but you're theirs. Treat them right so that they are not angry at the Lord. You claim to be a Christian, right? Don't give them a reason to not be one. Don't give them a reason to not be one. So how do we raise our families in this world? Well, we've got to talk, we've got to take the time, we've got to take ourselves to church, we've got to trust, we've got to treat. You know what we've got to do? We've got to make sure that God is a priority in our lives. And that's how we can take the Bible, we can walk with the Word, and we can learn how to raise a family in this world.